It's back and bigger than ever. It's the unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carrie, Josh, Eddie, and Bob.
All right, welcome back. It is the unofficial 40 right here from Soonerscoop.com, where the entire crew awaits. And West Virginia coming up this weekend is Brent Venables said yesterday at the end of his press conference, what, like no West Virginia?
Not one question.
He's a little perturbed at you guys.
Not even a thought of a question. I thought that was a pretty funny moment.
Yeah, I laughed. I mean, like, it was a true LOL moment when he did that. So we will talk some West Virginia today. Neil Brown, their head coach, and he's been under fire a little bit. I am fired up today because the Holiday Bowls returned to Van's Pig Stand, and I had one last night, and I'll be having one tonight, and then I'll have one the next night.
Hand up, had no idea what you were talking about, but that makes more sense. I thought you were talking about like a 2006 Holiday Bowl replay because you sent the message to the War Room last night, and it was like, I was like, okay, I don't really know what he's talking about.
When I typed in Holiday Bowl, I did think like
because they were both
think
capitalized.
I'm talking about.
I thought you were talking about the Great Holiday Bowl.
Well, now
Glenn Ingram.
Now isn't it just the Poinsettia Bowl now?
Something like that, yeah.
It's
The
not. Yep.
San Diego Credit Union Poinsettia
But you've always
Bowl.
said that was one of the worst bowl game experiences that you've had.
That was until I went to Orlando.
Right, at the Russell Athletic Bowl.
Yes.
But we're back in that mode.
Yeah,
Who knows what the Liberty Bowl might bring?
Oh, you can't even get to the Cheez-It Bowl this year.
That's why we have to you got to put all of the
Guaranteed rate.
Thank
guaranteed rate
God.
bowl.
Guaranteed rate.
Maybe
if
a week at
one
the Camelback.
goddamn thing can come out of this season, it could be that they're not qualified for the Cheez-It Bowl.
That is true. Like
Because there's nothing Josh and I like more than spending exorbitant amount of money to go cover a bowl game that no one gives a shit about.
oh, it could be worse. I mean, you could have to maybe go like cover like the Hawaii Bowl on like Christmas Day.
Yeah.
Or whatever that whenever they play that
Well,
godforsaken bowl.
it would be Josh and I going to cover that. You guys would stay at home.
That's fine. I mean, honestly, that's okay.
I mean, you want to talk about tax write-offs? My God.
Can we need to take a poll of the board. Like, at what level of bowls do you not care about? And then we can just punt. And Bob and Eddie can spend time with their families on the holidays, and we don't have to spend an insane amount of money to cover a game no one cares
Well, we
about.
could be going to Fort Worth or maybe Houston.
I've already said multiple times, if OU ends up in the First Responders Bowl, I will need a first responder because I might be on strike. Playing
Just
a bowl game
show up
at
for the game.
TCU Stadium
show up
for the
for the
second
game.
time this year.
I would say, Leo, if they played in Houston, you could stay with Josh, but that would take you 4 hours to get to his house.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
That's true.
Yes.
Texas
I
Bowl.
live in the greater Houston area, and it's still like an hour and a half from the stadium. So, you know.
I'm just curious. Is your mic plugged in, Josh?
Yeah.
Okay.
It should be.
Sound
let's
different?
make sure.
He doesn't sound like he's talking into a mic.
Am I too far away?
There we go.
There
we
it
go.
is.
Is that a little
Sounds-
better? Okay. Okay.
But to,
Yep.
to bring it to football, it's because you have TCU, Kent State, Texas, Baylor. That looks like 1 through 4. However, that's going to shake out. Then 5 through 8 is some form of OU, OSU, Texas Tech, you know,
And OSU's not done dropping. I mean,
and Kansas. So you don't, you know, so that's what we're looking at. Is it Liberty Bowl? Is it somewhere in the state of Texas or guaranteed rate?
Well, I'm ready.
First, you got to win Saturday to get bowl.
That's right. I'm ready to be positive. I mean, if they can find a way to salvage this thing and get to 8-4, there'll be some positive momentum and something they haven't been able to do here over the course of the first year in Brent Venables' era.
You know, I'm glad you found a way to finish that sentence. I was thinking about this. You know, we did the post game, the Eskridge Alexis post game podcast, and it was Josh joined us as well, and some people called it cathartic. I don't know. I mean, it was just we were very level headed. We weren't emotional about it. Nobody was calling for anyone's heads. Although I did post a screen cap this week that might have got Josh in some trouble. I apologize on the pod for that. We talk, we talk mature language about people in our analysis. So sometimes it's not for the world to see. But no, I mean, I've just listened to everybody this week. I think the worst thing I did is just sat around on the message board all day Sunday, just reading everyone's thoughts, and it just kind of depressed me for the first part of this week. But you sit here now and you walk away from it, and we talk about Brent Venables' press conference, and nobody asked West Virginia questions. We continue to ask about the defense in a game that OU lost by 3 points. Like, is that progress, or is it just that no matter what, if you lose, no one's going to be happy and everybody's going to pick everything apart?
Can it be a little bit of both? I mean,
it's just that there's progress, but there's still so much horrible stuff on film.
Yeah, the bad is just so bad that it kind of sends you back into this spiral of, okay, where are they getting better at? Like, what is a position group that has improved? And, unfortunately, in the situation that they're in right now, it seems like there isn't a whole lot of improvement on the defensive side of the ball. In fact, they're worse statistically than they were a year ago. I think that there's also this almost added depressing point of view too when you're just getting the ball ran down your throat. Like if
someone named Squirrel.
Right. If they were doing
it,
if you were doing it in a way in which you're giving up 450 through the air, it's like, well, you're not getting any pressure on the quarterback, and it kind of leads into everything. But it's almost like a test of manhood. It's like they just don't have the guys that can be. And when they can't line up, like that was one of the big things that I asked Ted Roof about. It's just like,
you're off the Christmas card for Ted Roof.
How's that happen?
Well, and here's the thing, like Brent, I thought it was interesting the way he kind of put it. He's like, well, I'm not talking about getting more physical as a football team. I'm saying we weren't as physical as Baylor last week. Like, he's not saying like there's something wrong in the program where we're not as physical. He's like, you got your asses kicked last week. They threw you around the field. Like, how do you feel about that? Like, it's not about ability. It's just about, for him, he's saying this is about your attitude. This is about your manhood.
See, the disappointing thing for me about Saturday was just that Iowa State was your get-right game, and now you were supposed to look like a different team, a better team for the final third of the season. And so when you put a defensive performance up like that against the Bears, now the final three games, like, you can't expect them to be much better because there's nothing to suggest that they've fully turned that corner. They fully grasp what Brent and the staff are trying to teach, and that now the light bulb's going to come on.
And we kind of talked about that, though. Like, okay, was what they did in the first half against Iowa State, giving up the 29 yards on the ground, is that more of Iowa State just being flat out awful offensively, or is that actually a step? And, last Saturday
it's about Baylor's offensive line versus Iowa State's offensive line in that instance.
Sure.
They're just not as good.
No, and it wasn't a step in the right direction. And, but again, you go back to even Saturday, there's moments where it's like, okay, this looks like something you can work with. And then they give up the 4th and 1, and all of a sudden they're running for 10 yards a carry.
Because that's why they punted, because the defense had stood up the Bears in the third quarter, so they felt confident. And if they would have pinned them back deep instead of it having to go for a touchback, might be a different story. But that's not how it worked out.
And it might be easy, and Brent said it on Tuesday, just as far as maybe it's just as simple as it is, like every little small thing. And they just add up over time, like not being able to down the punt inside the 1, Michael Turk hitting it too far, and them not even having the ability, like as great of an effort as that was for Marvin Mims.
Yeah, I take issue with the 3 interceptions before I'm bringing that up as, the little
Well, he
things.
brought up the kickoff, the opening kickoff.
Yeah, after you go up 7-0.
Yep, and then you let them get to the 40 instead of like the 15 or 20.
I'm curious, Josh, like how you felt. We saw it on the boards this week. I mean, people pointing out things that Danny Stutzman have said, in the past on, Jeremiah and Braden's podcast, the podcast on the Prairie, about kind of laughing off, Brent being kind of psycho about, every little step that he takes. And people on the board were like, well, maybe you should stop laughing it off because, I mean, you saw those plays that we were talking about. That's, when I accidentally screenshotted that stuff, like the one play in the end zone where he just walks in, like Stutzman, like I have no idea why he tried to take Jared Canick's, gap on that play. And then the Jets sweep, the final nail in the coffin play. Like, he couldn't have looked more lost on that play.
There was stuff. I mean, like, my problem with Danny Stutzman, there are moments he looks proficient.
Yeah.
He looks good. And then he'll have a play like those two near the goal line. The touchdown when Baylor walks in, I think over the right guard, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes.
Or it was
right where he was, that he vacated.
And it was – he basically – Baylor showed him something the play before, and he goes and he kind of does one thing because he's playing off of David Agwebu blitzing. And then the next play, Baylor basically shows it to him in reverse, if I'm remembering how this all played correctly. And he's like, oh, well, they did that. Okay, now this. And it just felt like a guy guessing. Like, just, I'm not confident in what I'm seeing, but I just saw this. That's what I'm going to go do. And he just let Baylor walk into the end zone there. I mean, and that's, guys, like, that's the thing. And I keep looking, like Eddie said a second ago, like, I think all this is manageable for OU fans if they felt like they were seeing improvement. Like, okay, they're getting better at this. And there are very incremental things. Like, I'm not saying there's no improvement. I think that's wrong. But when you watch LSU from where they were in week 1 against Florida State and then at home, beat Alabama, and I want to be quick to say LSU has a different talent pool, especially at the positions where you have to. They're starting a freshman at left tackle. He was a 5-star. Like, yeah, they lost a 5-star defensive lineman. They've got 3 or 4 guys in their front 7 that are first, second day picks. Like, they've got a whole bunch of ways to fix their problems. And that I get it. But at the same time, you've watched LSU get better week over week over week. Jaden Daniels is playing good football right now. And a month ago, that would have seemed impossible. So I like I said, that's kind of where I to a point, I understand the frustration. I really do. At the same time, I think everybody's still trying to look at it through the lens of the preseason and after Nebraska and what the expectations had become, rather than like, look at what this team is. Look where they are. There are fundamental problems that have nothing to do with coaching or anything like that. Like, there are guys that just still cannot line up. And to me, that's a question of messaging. Like, there's no way Ted Roof has not told Danny Stutzman where to be. He knows where to be. Why is he not processing what he's being told? Like, that's where you get into the question for me.
And then on top of that, I think the general reaction to that is, well, if you're going to give these guys opportunities, why keep giving the same guy opportunities over and over again if you know what you're getting? Which I understand is like, I think those guys are the best players. They need those guys out there. At some point, the light has to come on.
You know what's really bizarre to me is I don't think us or fans or anyone that watches OU football has made the effort to break down what's going on defensively like they have this year. Like, I mean, like you would watch Alex Grinch's defense and you would see some stuff and you're like, well, but like this year for some reason, like every player is getting singled out for doing something wrong.
Because you thought Brent was going to make them all better.
Yeah.
I mean,
But it's like, I think it's just a natural question. Like, okay, I'm going to go rewatch this and see where it's going so bad. And, I can see this and it doesn't look right. Like, there's some things that happen on the field where it's the first time we've really paid attention to what it looks like when a team is learning a whole new defense for the first time.
Yep. And guys, and that's kind of the other thing. Like, we talked about, and I think I was talking about this maybe early season, preseason, where I was watching this video where Kirby Smart's talking about his defense at Georgia, and they're like, well, how do you do this? And he's like, well, okay. And then he starts watching a play, and he's like, well, okay, we didn't actually run this right, but this guy's so damn good, he just makes a play that we weren't supposed to make. Like, and that's the deal. Like, that's the difference. Like, Oklahoma doesn't have the guys that can make up for the mistakes.
Right.
Like, okay, it's 2nd and 5, we blew that coverage, but it doesn't matter because our, future first-round defensive end sacked the quarterback anyway. Like, they can't get away with their mistakes because their margin for error is too small.
Well, it's like everybody saw Canick, and they're like, play him more. And then he plays more, and he makes all the same mistakes because he's young and he doesn't know the defense. It's like that would keep happening with every position because you don't have any experience, and Brent talked about that yesterday. And it's just like they don't have the depth to just tell someone you're not getting it done. We have to replace you because that's as much as they're going to be able to get it done at that position.
It's not a sexy thing to talk about either, but there is just it's being kind of, I guess, highlighted even more this year is that there is a severe development problem and just an outright understanding of the game of football, like an IQ problem that I think Brent Venables I think he's been kind of taken aback by, just like
how poorly coached these guys were.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. You'd have to be.
Like it's like they are trying to do a college algebra class with a basic understanding of elementary math.
Yeah.
Well, guys, like you look at, I mean, and we knew it. Like Brent talked about it on Tuesday. We're just scratching the surface of what this playbook should be, and these guys are still struggling with it. Like we haven't even gotten into the depth yet, and they're still having to learn it. And part of it is, guys, there's nobody like Jaron Canick can't watch David Ughhh do it the right way and is like, oh, okay, like I got it now.
Right,
like
yeah.
I see why we do this. Like there's no one to
There's
like
no mentorship. There's no helping somebody grow into the position.
Everybody's learning on the fly like everybody else. Like everybody's in square one.
Everybody's the same stage. Now I will say, and based on what Kerry said earlier, that lends some credence to like, if you're getting the same thing out of David Ughhh that you're getting out of Jaron Canick, I know where my vote goes there. But like, at the same time, I understand from a coaching perspective, you can't just say we're punting this season. Like I get it, but from a, we're trying to build to the future. I mean, to me, there's no question what you're doing there. Because I mean, David Ughhh is making the same mistakes, and I thought he had one of his better games, honestly. But is he bringing a lot more to the table that Jaron Canick isn't? Or like when you're trying to run that spy stuff, Jaron Canick could do that all day long against any quarterback in this league.
I heard Teddy talking about like the Stutzman comments, and you could tell that like it just pissed him off royally.
Interesting.
And it's one of those things too. And he kind of started talking about like when he was a freshman and how he was learning from Rocky Kalmus, like literally learning from one of the best linebackers to ever do it. And a lot of, obviously Teddy was extremely talented and would go on to win the Buckus and, fill that shoe. But at the same time, it's like everything that he got to where he got to was because he learned from one of the best to ever do it. So it kind of goes to your point of like, there is nobody there to really show them the way.
Danny Stutzman doesn't have a guy that would have heard that comment that walked up to him and be like, "What? Why the are you saying things like that?"
Right.
Like how dare you?
And that goes into leadership. That goes into just kind of the whole equation of what they're trying to kind of instill within the defense right now, and it's obviously not gone well.
I got to tell you, we had Chris and Madison here this weekend. They came by. They came in from Arkansas. He said that he was a big fan of my transitions into to product. And I told him I'm trying to make it more awkward, which I think I just did. But there is a big occasion going on this weekend because OU's playing at West Virginia. Would you like to take a guess what one of our partners is offering this weekend? No?
Free food.
Is it like a couch?
Free food for stops.
No.
Burning
like 100-yard
dumpster on
rushing
fire?
allowance.
Burning couches.
No. It is back. Dead Soxy. They're excited to announce an incredible fall score. Get into the sock game with the 2022 score sale. So here's how it works. At the conclusion of Saturday's game between OU and West Virginia, however many points the Sooners score, Dead Soxy will match that number as a percentage discount. And look, this is a pretty good deal. I mean, OU's likely to score some points. We don't know if they'll win because West Virginia's going to score some points too. But so let's say OU, they score 42 on West Virginia. So the promo code will activate for 42% off. If they get 50, no problem. It's 50 points off or 50% off. So the promo will start at 35%. So if the Sooners go and lay a stinker, you're still going to have a really good deal. So Regardless of the score, regardless of the outcome, you'll still get 35% off. And it'll cap at 60. So if they score more than 60, I mean, they can't lose money on this deal. The score sale will run from the conclusion of the game up until kickoff of Bedlam the following weekend. Load up on your favorite socks and score this incredible offer. Visit deadsoxy.com. That's DEADSOXY.com. Use the promo code SCOOP at checkout. It's the same promo code that you've always used. Use that at checkout. Receive the score sale percentage off of all your orders. And as always, stay soxy. So there you go.
Well, let's talk about the offensive side of the ball. We've talked a lot about the defense. Obviously, it seems like we do this every week. It's like, well, if this wouldn't have gone wrong, this wouldn't have gone wrong, and this wouldn't have gone wrong, it would have been really, really good. But it's just like they can't get out of their own way.
I just want to know how it would have gone without the 3 interceptions. Would they have won the game?
Yes.
If it was just 1 interception.
I think so.
They scored 10 points off of the turnovers.
And you're putting the defense in.
I think they win with only 2 interceptions.
You're saying even if they had 2 interceptions, they still win?
I think so. I really do. Like that, they just, like every time in the first half they'd start to gain control of that game, it was another pick. They just couldn't get out of their own way.
You want a really hot take? I think they win the game without the face mask before halftime.
The one that set the field goal back?
Dylan Gabriel, he ran out of bounds at what, the 7-yard line? On the play that Andrew Raym was called for the penalty?
Yeah, he did.
I mean, they would have been inside the 10 with what?
Well,
30-ish seconds left?
Raym was called for 2 penalties on that play.
Well, either one. Okay. I mean, if you can get away with that play without a penalty, without a penalty.
I do kind of take issue with that. Like, yes, he was holding, but he was holding because he was grabbing his face mask. Or, it should just all be, it's like,
just one.
How many charges can
we
you
go
pile on, officer?
Can we call 20? Just give him 20 yards. No, but they would have had first and goal, and who knows what happens there. But it's just another one of those examples, and you saw it in the K-State game as well with the pre-snap penalties. If you can just eliminate some of this stuff, and maybe this is just what bad football teams do or mediocre football teams do, they give themselves, like, you're always trying to get over that hump.
Yep.
And if they were able to do that, like the run game's really good right now. Eric Gray's incredible.
31 touches. Oof.
I mean, the guy literally, like the 4th and 1 that they weren't able to pick up, which, again, how that happens, I don't know.
That was wide. That was wide open for it.
But it's just little things that if they can clean that up, it could be a really damn good offense. Like as bad as Dylan Gabriel, and I say bad, like, with air quotes, as bad as he's played and as poor as he's played, is in comparison to the quarterback play that everybody around here is used to, he's still like top 20 in the country in QBR right now. I mean, he's playing well enough.
There was a trivia question that my guy Spinozzi had this morning. It was pretty good. He wanted to know the number of transfer quarterbacks that transferred before this season have more touchdowns than Dylan Gabriel. The number is 5.
Okay.
But like Caleb Williams is first, and they're Bo Nix is up there. There's one other big name, I can't remember who it is, and then there were 2 names that were like smaller school guys. But I mean, he's done well. I mean, it's not like he's been trash, and we know how valuable he is.
Sure.
Because if you lose him, it's just like at Oklahoma State. Your offense cannot function without him.
Sure.
But I mean, still, he threw for 400 yards and had 3 turnovers, 1 interception, and then he had, 280 something? Was that what he had last weekend?
Yeah, he wasn't over 3. He was under 3.
He was good though. I mean, he threw the ball well, even though it was swirling winds. But you have 3 interceptions and you lose the game. I mean, that's just not Oklahoma quarterback standards.
15 to 26, 148, 1 touchdown.
That was all he had.
Oh no, excuse me. I was looking at Iowa State.
That's
my fault. That's my fault.
Yeah, he was.
I was looking at the box score from the Iowa State game earlier. I think it was like 250 something.
I don't know how that second one wasn't pass interference, but that's okay.
261, 22.
Willis tipped up.
Yeah, because he couldn't get a second arm on it.
22 of 34, 261, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions.
And 70 rushing yards.
9 for 70. 1 touchdown. 7-8 a carry. And like there was some stuff that I really liked, like the little like quarterback called draw inside the red zone. Mm-hmm. Perfect play call.
Yeah. I mean, they've done some good things, and because of him, they have won 5 games. I mean, we saw what happened when they don't have him.
Yeah, and Jeff Lebby talked about it on Monday, Bob. They have to get Javonte Barnes back. I think that's progressing in the right direction going into this weekend in Morgantown.
Yeah, it didn't seem like it was worthwhile to ask Brent for an update because I think he would have just said it's too early to know. I thought Jeff's answer definitely alluded to it, though, saying we're ready to have him back and feel that we're on the track to making that happen. And it's not a knock on Marcus Major at 100%, but Marcus Major not at 100% just isn't delivering the goods. There's no other way.
And
to
he's
say
rusty on
He
top of it.
He had one run. It was like it followed an Eric Gray 14-yarder. Then Marcus Major had a 15-yarder as well coming towards the north end zone.
Yep.
I think he probably scores on that earlier in the season when he's healthy. And right now, I don't.
People kind of forget, like early in the season, before Eric Gray really got going, like when Marcus Major would go out there, you'd be like, maybe he should run it more.
Oh, I think we had an entire podcast dedicated to let's get more carries for Marcus Major, right?
Yes.
Major is being worked on the sideline a lot, like after any sort of hit. So he's just trying to gut his way through it, and they need Barnes back. It's weird that a freshman running back is that vital, but that's where we are.
I was surprised, too, that they just didn't try to hit Marvin Mims as much. When they hit him over the top there, it's like, okay, finally, they found something. Mm-hmm. And it just didn't seem like they went back to it all day. But then again, I mean, they were moving the ball at times.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't just a show where they were going 3 and out every time.
I'm not worried about the offense. I think they'll do well against West Virginia as well.
Unless Dante Stills destroys them all.
I think that they should have, the next 3 weeks, they should have like all 3 of the games left, and especially with Spencer Sanders' situation in Stillwater, they're going to be able to move the football. Like, I think that they're going to be able to play well. I think that they're going to be in position to win all 3 of the games. It's just, what are you going to get on the other side?
I mean, I think they're assuming Spencer Sanders is done, and I talked to somebody today. They were like, if he comes back, it'll be for, try and play in Bedlam. So, I mean,
a Mason Rudolph deal in 2015.
Yeah. I mean, he may not do much or it may not be effective, but, I think it's one of those things that doesn't require surgery. And if he can, just make it through the pain. But let's say they don't have Spencer Sanders. I think Texas Tech might be the toughest game because I watched them play TCU, and their defense,
they haven't
pretty
given
salty.
up. They're 4-5. Yeah. They're not giving up on anything.
No, and that's the one that's kind of scary just in the fact that, and I know that's 3 weeks away, but I mean, whoever plays quarterback for Tech, they're going to be able to move the football. Like, you're going to have to go down there and not have any mistakes, and with this offense, you just don't know if you can guarantee that, at least right now.
Yeah, and they didn't have Morton against TCU, so I mean they're even a better team than they showed then. By the way, it is one of my favorite. I like the guy. In like last time at Big 12 Media Days, he couldn't have been cooler. Just talking to him on the side and stuff. But like, what is Gary Patterson thinking right now, heading into that game, knowing that team never played that well for him?
I think that somebody like a Gary Patterson would say that I know how to evaluate talent. And I just couldn't. It's almost like a little bit like the Mike Stoops stuff here at the end of his era. It's like he just couldn't
reach
them
anymore.
The locker room.
He
wasn't reaching them.
He had lost something that they just had basically tuned out. So I don't know. I mean, it is going to be kind of interesting seeing those 2 teams go up against each other this weekend with Gary Patterson now in Austin, obviously, and TCU all their success in the top 4. But I don't know.
I mean, I'm not sitting here saying like, oh, he knows he must know something about like Max Duggan that's gonna, like, is he gonna say something to him to like shake his confidence before the game starts or something? So I mean, I don't know who do you guys think wins it?
Big 12?
Yeah, you think it's TCU going away?
You want my hot take?
That Adrian Martinez gets hit by a car and they start the right quarterback at Kansas State and they win it?
I think Baylor might win it.
I'm leaning toward Baylor.
Is that
I love Jeff Grimes.
Is that just a complete like overreaction of like I obviously wouldn't be saying that if OU would have won on Saturday. But
if Baylor was really going to win it, they would have beat OU worse than 38-35. I'm sorry.
That's my thinking.
That's fair.
OU didn't even play. OU's
That's
not
fair.
a great team. Didn't
No, that's
play
fair.
well.
It's completely fair.
And could have won that game late. I mean, it was all there to take.
Yeah.
I think guys, Baylor closes with Kansas State, TCU, and Texas.
Exactly. We're going to find out.
There's a real chance they go 0-3. Like
I think they're going to win this weekend. I think they beat K-State.
I don't know. I think K-State's the second best team in the conference.
They're so beat up, though.
They've got those offensive and defensive lines. Though.
Kansas State kind of ran into what I think TCU's running into this weekend, just as far as like you play with fire so many times, you're bound to get burned. And I don't know. Like I guess my question would be is who wins in Austin this weekend, and then you'd go from there. If Texas wins, they could win the Big 12.
Texas would probably be my choice right now.
I don't think we could. I think
Really?
I think I have to bleep all of this out. I don't think I can allow this on the pod.
I mean, it's
who's more complete than they are right now. They're playing pretty well defensively. They have a solid ground game. They've got a quarterback that can make all the throws. They've got a guy to fetch.
we say that, and we were watching the fourth quarter meltdown. Saturday.
Yeah,
I thought Kansas State was going to win the game.
Kansas State had a shot to win that game in the end. Like Ewers, to me, like I was higher on Ewers after the Alabama game and then the OU game, and I've kind of chilled on him a little bit. Like the Oklahoma State game, he was awful, and Kansas State, he wasn't able to really pull away. I mean, their offense bogged down in the second half.
You trust Adrian Martinez or Max Duggan to make better throws?
Look,
I don't.
If you're throwing a deep ball to Xavier Worthy, give me Quinn Ewers all day long. But I mean, think of all the throws he missed at Oklahoma State, though. I mean, he missed a lot of throws.
And he missed some good ones.
And I'll say this
against Oklahoma.
to me, it's not quarterback versus quarterback because we all know Adrian Martinez is not a great thrower of the football. But what Kansas State does is they build it's kind of like watching the Eagles. They build their offense around a quarterback that's has limitations. And they don't put him in those situations. Like late in games, that was that was the problem with the Texas game. He fumbled it away. Like he didn't Martinez fumble it away at the end?
Yes.
Yeah.
Keandre Coburn.
I mean, like he's known for big game gaffes late in games. Like
well, he tried to once.
He
got
did.
Away
He
with
tried
it,
to.
and then did it again.
Exactly.
Since the end of the Red River Showdown, Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers is completing just 50.9% of his passes for 229 yards and 6.5 per attempt.
Yeah,
wow.
that's bad.
Wow, the yards per attempt is like people. That's bad.
Here's the problem, Josh. You have the same problem that everybody else has. Is Texas almost beat Alabama, so you think they're better than they are. Where Tennessee beat Alabama, everybody thinks they're better than they are. LSU, everybody thinks they're better. Alabama is down. Like
the thing with Texas, they
they're
score.
Still a top 15 team by any measure.
But they're not Georgia.
Texas limps to the finish line this season.
Georgia's walking to another title.
Yeah.
That's the deal with Texas. They limp to the finish line. They were up 31-17 to Tech, 31-17 to Cowboys. They were up 34-20. They have a hard time getting to the end.
Well, and you think about it. I mean, what's TCU been great at? Closing late.
Sure.
Like just finding ways to win late in games. I mean, that's a really good point, Bob.
And when you're 9 games into this, it's not just a coincidence anymore. Like, I know that we're talking about TCU and you're just waiting for something bad to happen to them, but got to give them credit. Like, they have found ways to win. And I think, when you get this late in the season, it usually takes something for a team. You have to either have it or you don't to find a way in the fourth quarter to win games, and they've been able to do that so far.
It's been a great
I think there's
TCU Texas pod.
Yeah, we'll send this over to Orange Bloods.
If TCU doesn't have Quentin Johnston at near full strength, I don't see how they win that. Like point. He is a difference maker that just not many teams of TCU's caliber have. Like he's a guy that should be, I mean, by any measure, be at the OU's, Texas's, Alabama's of the world.
But the thing that I'll end it here. But like the thing for TCU that impressed me is like DeAndre Miller as a closer, as a running back. Like he always seems to break off something big near the end to kind of put him over the top. So anyway, I tell you what, let's talk about Louisiana because that's where shrimp come from. especially prime shrimp. Primeshrimp.com, Prime, shrimp.com. There's no thaw, there's no mess, there's no fuss. A lot of great flavors. You got the signature season, French Quarter Alfredo, the garlic herb butter, or you get the Louisiana shrimp boil, and the new flavor, lemon and cracked pepper. So go check them out. They've got seasoned 6-packs. You can get variety 6-packs, sauce 6-packs. And if you use the promo code SoonerScoop, you'll get $20 off your first order. That's primeshrimp.com. Great guys over there, but got a lot of people on the website that have tried the shrimp, but not a bad word to say about it. So if you like some shrimp and you want an easy meal, maybe for some of you guys that, have to cook for yourself sometimes, or the kids, maybe they like the shrimp, you just want something easy to make and restaurant quality, primeshrimp.com is your home. Use that promo code SoonerScoop, get $20 off your first order.
Before we get to all the recruiting, obviously, with the Colton Vasek stuff, to recap a little bit more on like what Brent was saying yesterday. Yeah. It's fascinating to me, just like the big picture questions, and it's not something that I think Brent's very comfortable with.
Yeah,
just as far as the doubt and the, I guess in a way, just not ever really have being in this spot, even for him, obviously not as a head coach, but just as a coach in general, with a team that is struggling as much as they are. It's just kind of fascinating in some of the stuff that he says when he talks about the inexperience. He talks about like winning just in general, like the stuff that he talked about with Ughhh at the very end of the press conference. I found to be
like if they were 9-0,
well,
they'd have to be fighting stuff.
It's almost like he's saying like these guys, they obviously know how to win, but they don't know how to win at the level that we're trying to get to. And
I mean, and you're right. It's
like the process of winning, like it's almost like I translate what he's saying to, winning the Big 12 is great, but you have no idea what it takes to get to the top.
To beat Georgia.
To beat
normal Alabama.
To win.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of fascinating to me. And then like, when you step back from it, it's like, I don't know, like half of me wants to believe in what he's talking about and that everything's going to be okay. But I also see what's out there right now, and it just seems like it's so far from what they want to get to and the foundation that they're trying, like stuff with Danny Stutzman laughing about like being off an inch or a step.
Yeah.
It's like, if you don't understand that, you're never going to understand like the bigger picture of playing championship defense.
Right. Well, and I think it's also one of those things, like it's been a while since these guys have been in that spotlight, and whenever Oklahoma did get into the college football playoff, all these problems with the defense, they got exposed. Like, and these guys haven't even seen that happen. Like, I mean, they do during the regular season, but like I guess the thing is the urgency. Like, there doesn't seem that they've shown much urgency, and that whether that's getting better or just getting stops during a game or. It kind of goes back to what we talked about last Sunday, Josh, too. Like, after they gave up that 4th and 1, they just crumbled. And Eddie read, the line that Eric Bailey had tweeted. Like, it was just is a team that has no backbone almost. I hate to say it that way, but it really feels that way at times.
Guys, I mean, because there's no denying that there'll be stretches where you're like, okay, this is functional football. They're playing pretty well. They're coming up with stops. And it won't be because, Baylor stopped doing this or Iowa State changed that. Like, they're just playing sound football. And then the second something goes wrong, somebody is out of alignment, then all of a sudden for 2 or 3 plays, you can tell the whole defense is just, it's like it's the fire drill. Like, everybody just kind of running around doing whatever they're supposed to. And I mean, so much of it is motion related. When you throw motion at that defense, they get real out of whack real fast. And I get it, but like Brent talked about, I mean, you're just doing numbers like 2x2, 3x1. Like, what are we looking at here? Like that at this point in the year, that should be
second nature.
That should be manageable. Yeah. They should know how to do that. And I think, like I said, it's not what they're being taught. Now, again, you've got to figure out some way for your message to get across. Like, that matters. If it's not hitting, figure out some other way to do it. But again, this is the 3rd straight defensive staff where we've been like, well, why can't they reach these guys? Like, it's like there's something in the water. It's just weird.
I mean, my first thought when people say stuff like that is, well, why do you think these guys are here? They knew they didn't play defense when they committed. Like, maybe they're just not really that interested in playing defense.
They were the game changer. They're the one going to change it all. That's what they've been selling.
Here's my question, Josh. Like, we talked on Sunday about like who's any good on this defense. And I get that. I've got that question a lot this week. Like, who is moving forward can make this defense better? Like in this recruiting class, the 2023 class, like, well, we'll talk about who's not here anymore. But like the guys that are committed that we assume will make it. Like, who of those guys make an instant impact in your mind?
Well, that's the interesting rub. And I did want to say, because, I think on Sunday I listed, this guy, or maybe it was in the board chat. I said something along the line of like 5 or 6 guys. And with that exception, there's nobody on that defense like you're afraid to lose. Like, I don't know how many difference makers are there. I didn't include a lot of younger guys, and people are like, you don't think they're going to be good? I was just talking about guys that are playing a real role right now. Yeah. Like, and I even left out Jaron Kanek. Obviously, Jaron Kanek has to be part of your future plans. But as far as the recruiting class, I mean, I think Lewis Carter is a guy that I think could come in and play a role early, because you talk about the kind of guy, he's going to tackle well. He's very physical. Like, he does all the little stuff that Brent is going to love. Like, he is a, when they lost Caleb Spencer, I know a lot of people got upset. I think Lewis Carter is an ideal guy for that cheetah role. I think he makes a lot of sense there. Very smart, kind of savvy, almost like maybe a more explosive Deshaun White is a pretty good comp there. Kind of a safety linebacker tweener that that wouldn't fit in some defenses, but I think really makes a lot of sense here. PJ Adebawore, I mean, he's the most talented guy in this class. I mean, there's just no way around that. It's going to be about how quickly he can pick it up. Guys, I think over the last 4 weeks, and his high school season ended last week. I think over the last 4 weeks, he had something like 17 tackles for loss and like 9 sacks. Like, he just went nuts against some of the best competition in his state. So he has that ability, and he's planning to come in at semester, so that'll help a ton. Phil Pachotti is going to be an interesting guy to watch, just because he's again kind of a Brent linebacker. He gets it. He's real smart. Like, I wonder if he's going to pick things up fast enough. And being at a place like IMG, he's played high quality competition. It's not going to be the jump for him that it is from some guy from rural Oklahoma or something. Like, he kind of has a better feel for it. And then in the secondary, Jacoby Johnson, Makari Vickers, Josiah Wagner, those are all guys that there's a world where that happens, like where it makes sense. Makari Vickers is a safety, I think, could come in and make an impact. Jacoby Johnson, he's so talented, you just can't write him off. But I think he needs time to learn. And then Josiah Wagner, a tough little mix-it-up cornerback that wants to come and get in your face and play, and is very physical and aggressive. Guys, I mean, that's kind of what I led into this whole comment saying, like, who on that defense should feel safe against any of these really talented young guys? Like, they'll come take your job if they come in and do it right. And there's several guys that are possible. Now, in a perfect world, that shouldn't be happening, but there's nobody on this defense that should have a job just handed to them next season.
It does feel reassuring.
Other than Billy Bowman.
Yeah.
Sure. And it does feel reassuring, I guess, in a way that, like, Brent Venables, and he talked about this on Tuesday, just as far as like what they're identifying in players, and especially when you're talking about physicality, guys that want to go run to the fire. I don't think that Brent has just forgot how to evaluate talent. Like, he's going to be able to get guys in here that he wants or that he can see fit in this defense.
Well, and he's seen guys that win national championships and what that looks like recently. Like, to me, Josh, I see it kind of interesting because the type of player that Brent is going to be recruiting, like, you might have had staffs in the past that were just like, oh, we see this guy's tape and he looks really good and he's got high, all these other schools are after him. Like, when Brent brings a kid in, I see it being a totally different thing where it's like, you may think highly of this kid and you see his tape, but Brent's putting that kid through his paces. He's teaching him, how to play the position, like, while he's on his visit. Like, I could see Miguel Chavis, like, down on all fours, like in a hallway, just, showing guys stuff. Like, they are going to attract guys that eat, breathe, and sleep football. I mean, to me, more so than former staffs were.
Well, and I think also it's really funny you kind of bring this up, Kerry, is I was literally just talking to a recruit probably an hour ago. We're just kind of DMing back and forth. And he is a guy that, and I want to give a lot of credit, like Stoops Bros and Donnie Hazelwood and those guys on our board do a great job, like tracking the follows, like, okay, this coach is following this guy. And there are guys that I'm kind of quick to respond to because I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I could see them going in that direction. And then there's guys that I'm a little more lukewarm about. And, this is one of the guys I was like, I don't know if they're going to go down that road. And they had followed him in the last week or so. And so far there's been no contact. And I was like, have they reached out? Have they contacted you? He said, no, not yet. And I said, okay, that's kind of normal. I mean, there's some guys that are real fast, like Marcus Strong's a good example. Ashton Sanders is another. And then some guys, it seems like it takes a little longer to see if those are going to be real targets. And what I have gathered in talking to both the recruits and just some sources is that's when they really start digging in. Like, okay, we're talking to coaches. We're talking to, area scouts, people from the region that are, whether it's a ex-coach or just someone they know and they like and trust their opinion on, they start having these conversations. And then rather than like, well, hey, we're interested in you, we want to talk to you, and then they go dead silent a couple days later after they find something they don't like, they tend to be a little more patient and just kind of see, okay, this guy checks all the boxes, now we're ready to go. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing. And that's where you get guys like you're talking about, Kerry, that fit what Brent is looking for. Like, this guy breathes football. Like, whatever else, he's not going to be worried about, the I don't know, the knitting team or whatever you want to say. That was a very Bob Stoops kind of thing for me there. But just a generic kind of not real idea, thing that would distract a football player. But like, that is, like they're not going to have those guys. These are going to be guys that are like Brent that just chew up football tape and are into it. Because guys, I don't know about you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. The thing that staggers me is how often we're hearing these guys on defense didn't watch anything they weren't asked to watch.
Correct.
That blows me away that was the standard of operation.
And they definitely didn't watch any, like, Sunday. Yep, they just took Sundays off.
I mean, Deshaun White was talking, 2 weeks ago, about, like, that was the first time he had come, and I think Brent even said it 2 weeks ago.
Brent mentioned that Deshaun White had
never come in on Sunday to watch. It's like, I don't know how that happens.
Sunday, like how this works is like you have to be given a mandatory day off, and that's Sunday.
Right.
The coaches can't be around.
But they have all that stuff on an iPad.
But the expectation is, you come in with your position group and you go over it as players without the coaches having to basically pester you to do
Correct.
it.
It's crazy to me. I mean, I'm right there with you, Josh.
But just to be clear, what you're saying is
concerning.
Like Deshaun White said that nobody was coming in on Sunday.
He basically said, I had never done that before. That just was never something that I did, would come in and watch film on Sunday. And he said that he came in like during the bye week and started watching film of old Cheetah guys, Ryan Carter and guys, Isaiah Simmons and guys at Clemson that is like, I just don't understand. And he even said, it's like, it helped me. It helped me. And obviously the way that he's played here,
playing better,
he's played better. And, I don't know if that's just one way that, guys learn differently. They're going to get comfortable differently, but it's just wild to me to actually hear them say that.
That's why the personnel is going to be so intriguing, because they only lose White and Broyles. That's it. Like, everyone else can come back. So who's going to come back and who's going to get recruited over or played over? I no idea what defense is going to look like.
Guys, what is your my general feel on that? And again, you guys are closer to it, so I take more stock in what you've got to say. But my general feel is like there's a lot of guys I think they believe are going to come back. Now, some of the bottom of the roster, the guys that aren't really playing, like I expect some churn there. But I don't get the feeling like that everybody's pissed off and is ready to get the hell out of town.
I don't get that impression either. I don't know what – I'm just going to say I'm not dogging on him. I'm just saying, like Reggie Grimes as an example. It'd be his fourth year in the program. What more do you think you can do with him? Or do you look at someone like a PJ to try to come in and see what he can do right from the jump?
Sure. Or, like I'm just trying to think of somebody that really hasn't, a Josh Eaton. Like
who now has played 4 games.
So
I'm very curious to see if he plays another game. Because he was a red shirt for sure, and now he's played special teams in back-to-back games, and he's reached his 4-game limit.
Yeah, there's a lot of those guys. Like and it might be unfair because he's been injured, but like a Shane Wider. What is his spot in the future of this defense? Those are the guys that are, probably more interesting to me. But then again, you look back at, when you're talking about maybe a Reggie or, I'm not saying, Bob, that you're forecasting that by any means, but like they have to get better. Do you go to they're obviously going to have to go to the portal. They're going to have to get some guys, whether that be the same ilk of a Jeffrey Johnson or whoever, but they have to get guys in there that are, and not just warm bodies. They have to get guys in there that are going to be contributors.
Yeah,
I think we feel like Grayson Halton could be somebody at the, in the future, but they need guys next year.
Well, I mean, the question that has to be answered is like, how hard, do you go into the portal?
I think you have to go very hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to get whatever you can get. And if that means you got to process some guys, you got to process some guys.
I think that, and that's talks come up on the board. It's come up, wherever when you're talking about OU defensively, like how did they not go through, the bowl season and get feedback and say, yeah, we got to go harder in the portal than they did last year. But then again, they brought in
hard. I mean,
they went hard, but could they have gone harder?
Jeffrey Johnson was going to be a great pickup, and he just has
Laulu was supposed to be like all that experience, all that production.
Mateers, Batayer, however you want to say his name.
They've been disappointing.
Yeah, I mean,
they've been disappointing.
No one that they brought in. Trey Morrison. I mean, he's
had moments.
Had some moments, but not done. I mean,
that's not what you expect from a 5-year guy.
You'd almost have to say C.J. Colton is the best defensive transfer, and he's really done nothing more than intercept 2 passes.
Yeah, and he's just, kind of, sort of, towards the middle of the season, just finally gotten opportunities to get out there, and maybe that's been because other guys haven't played well enough.
And then he had his panic moment against Baylor.
Yeah, he talked about it on Tuesday night.
Yeah,
it was a good conversation with him. You can tell that he's like, this guy's been through this before. He's not deer in the headlights talking to the media.
But I just think unless you're talking about rating teams where coaches get fired that had good talent, like how much is going to be out there, especially on the defensive line, like.
Well, and that's the problem.
That's always the problem. The portal with defensive line portal.
But the portal has settled down. It's not the wild, wild west anymore. I mean, with the new rules, you got the 30-day period and then the 15-day period. Or if your coach quits, then you can have 30 days to enter the portal. Like, it's not the free for all it once was, and not everybody has. If you're to me, it seems like it's going to have to be more. I guess it doesn't have to be one way or the other, but will it be more young players? Will it be older players like that are graduates? I mean,
yeah, that just goes back to the thought that you have to develop guys, and with Todd Bates' track record, with Brent Venables' track record, I guess it's more hope than anything that they start developing guys at some point.
Here's my question: the way things went last weekend and the way they'll finish out, like, would he go after a Clemson player that entered the portal?
I wonder the same thing, Kerry. Like, is there a statute of limitations? Like, is it, okay, now it's because if a kid enters the portal, like, why wouldn't Brent recruit him? Like, I knew I've got a background with you.
It's not like Brent had some grand scheme. It's like, I'm going to wait a year, and then I'm going to steal all the players, and it'll look like
at some point, though, reality has to set in that I got to get this shit fixed, or I'm not going to have a job. Like, and I think that's far down the road, obviously, but at some point, if you limp into this and you say you go 1-2 to finish this thing, and you're 6-6 all of a sudden.
You're saying you got to put aside the
you got to start looking out for yourself.
Thing. Yeah.
This isn't show friends,
right?
So anyway,
and it's hard to project like who's going to be in, who's going to be out. Like, obviously, it just.
It's hard to imagine a lot of early entries outside of like a Marvin Mims or a Eric Gray or something like Anton, clearly.
I could see, but here's the thing: like those transfers, like I can totally see those guys being those guys that, like, here's your problem if you're OU, like who's going to play in the bowl game if you go to a shitty bowl? Eric Gray's not going to want to play in a bowl game.
Yeah, I guess it's easy to say this right now, but I guess I would just fall back on the idea that it seems like this team, all you hear is, and even talking to players and stuff, they like each other. They like being around each other.
They clearly do.
The 5-4 hasn't weighed on them.
I'm not reporting that Eric
No.
Gray is already out of the bowl game.
Yeah, it just
hasn't even been achieved yet.
You can say that they love playing around each other, but at some point you got to make a business decision, and is playing in the Liberty Bowl more important than trying to make money next year?
But I mean, I was right there with Isaiah when he was making his decision. Like, he didn't want to tell me because like we were still just launching like his merch and stuff. But like, it wasn't like a personal thing, and it wasn't like he didn't like his teammates. And I think he acted like he did. It didn't bother him at all, but I think it did. I mean.
Well, that might have been different too if
it wasn't the Lincoln thing, yeah.
If all of that shit wouldn't have happened.
That's true.
That was, I guess it was kind of unique in its own way, just as far as the way that season ended and everybody being blindsided and everything that went back into that.
Well, the fact that Caleb played in that bowl game, like Williams, like that was also kind of odd and strange.
It's crazier. Like the further away we get from it, it's like, why did he play?
To get that NIL deal worked out.
Sure.
So anyway, but no, Josh, we can move on to recruiting. I know there was a decommitment that you had prepared everybody for, and it wasn't like it was a big secret that was going out there. And
I said it before we started. It's like the meltdown wasn't really a meltdown because I think everybody kind of knew.
You had people who've been prepping for a month, and then people were prepping for the last 3-4 days.
I think ever since he took that Texas visit, I think everybody kind of was waiting for the other shoe to drop.
The only thing that I kind of said, well, let's see if this can shift things, is if he had made it to Norman last weekend. I thought, okay, because I mean, you just don't make that drive and that trip if you're not interested. But like my feeling was like it got to be the time to do it or not do it, and he was like, I'm not that interested. And I thought his comments about watching going to OU Texas and feeling like he was cheering for the wrong team was indicative. And I know people say, well, yeah, OU was losing by a bunch of man, like I feel like fans should have even a better feel for this than we do. Like, imagine if you were committed to Texas, all our OU fans out there listening, and Texas had the best of it for a long time, and you just thought, man, I've got to do what's best for my future, and I think that's going to Texas. And then all of a sudden, Oklahoma comes back, beats the brakes off of Texas, and you're thinking, I can go play for the school I dreamed of going to play for, the school my father played at, and you can't relate to that. Like I don't know. Like we were talking before, and I think his commitment was far more surprising than his decommitment. Now it's just about what Oklahoma can do to mitigate it. Can they go find a good replacement? And there's several options out there that are interesting. Some kind of off the radar, some that are well-known guys that I think Oklahoma's had a role with. And again, Tassili Akana is still in play. So like there's no reason people are kind of panicking and acting like, oh, it's the sky is falling. Like it can still be just as good, honestly, but we'll have to see the dots kind of connect. But it is, there's no question. I mean, Colton Vasek's a really good player, probably the best defensive lineman in the state of Texas. That would have been a huge win for Oklahoma. And I know people say, well, it's because OU lost. I think if Texas, even, let's say that game's 35-28 and OU's really competitive and Dylan Gabriel's healthy and yada, yada, go through the whole thing. And they're still pretty much where they are. They're both still around 6-3, 5-4, just kind of good, not, I guess, above average college football teams. Like, I still think he goes to Texas because the gap isn't there anymore. Like, that clear, Texas didn't go to a bowl game and OU, went 11-2 last year. So that's where you get into the trouble there. I think he wanted to believe in Texas, and they gave him just enough to do so.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we've said before. Is like you thought you were committing to an OU team that's on the verge of a national title, and it's not. And so if that causes you to look elsewhere, that can't be frowned upon because you committed to something that hasn't been lived up on the other side. So if OU Texas are equal, then he's going to Texas. Well, if that's how he sees it, then that's how it's going to play out. But if you think OU's better and you go to OU, but if you don't see that now, it makes a heck of a lot of sense that now he's going to go to the Horns.
It's a lot easier to admit now, too. Like, when you look at all the guys that are on, I mentioned it to you guys before we started as far as, like, just the list of names that are, Austin Westlake. It's like, that's
kind of a Bryce Foster situation.
Yeah, it's like,
again.
it is
Sorry,
in a
Josh.
way. It
Sorry,
is in a
Josh.
way, just as far as, like, yeah, should have seen that. Not that we didn't see it coming, but it's a lot easier now that it's all happened that you go, well, I mean, I don't even blame the kid. I don't. There is no, like, ill will towards Colton Vasek because I think at the end of the day,
You're no
everybody
fun.
kind of knew that it was going to happen.
And because
What happened
like
to you?
I'm soft. I've become soft.
we don't have that in-state team. Like Norman North's not going to have like 10 guys that go to OU, so we can't fully understand what that's like to have just a mega recruiting ground like that right in your backyard.
All right. So outside of Vasek, what was it? There was a guy that went to Ohio State that had OU. Was that 2 weeks? Was that last week?
Katie McDonald.
Yeah, McDonald.
We talked about that last week.
Okay.
It's not a lot of
Another
good news.
L on the defensive line. I know that's not going to be.
All right, Josh, tell us Ashton Sanders and David Hicks are still coming next weekend, please.
Did we lose Josh?
Oh no.
He said, "That's it. I'm done."
Myself.
He muted himself again. He muted
Damn
himself.
it.
It's a touch thing. So yeah, you can't touch the microphone or you hit the mute switch. Bob learned that as well. I
Well,
think Eddie has as
no,
well.
it was entirely my choice. I was typing something. I was scarred early for how much trouble I got in for typing while talking. So I've tried to do that, but sometimes I forget to unmute myself. But anyway, yeah, my expectation is still that David Hicks and Ashton Sanders will both be in Norman for the Bedlam game. I think there will be some more visitors. One of the guys, and I kind of referenced him earlier, I talked about him a little bit more in length in Woke for the few people out there that aren't already members. You can find more there, but he Taylor, and I think it's Wine, Wein. He's from Nolensville, Tennessee. Really interesting guy on tape. Like, I watch that guy on tape and I see a Rivals 250 kid. But his offers are like Austin P and the Mac and stuff. And I'm like, there's something I'm missing here. And I don't know what it is because he looks like, a top 40 player in Texas, like on tape. I don't have an explanation for it yet. I've reached out to his coach. I've reached out to him. So I'm trying to dig up a little bit more. And like for them to be like, hey, why do you not, why do you suck more than I think you suck? But so far no answer on that question.
Perfect
But
phrasing. Yes.
yeah, no, exactly. It seems like a total winner.
6'5",
but
245
no,
is what Rivals has him listed at.
Yeah, he is a really interesting dude. Really like what I see, and I just, like I said, we're trying to figure out what's going on there, but. He's been followed by, Brent Venables, Miguel Chavis, Todd Bates. He's there. There is clear interest there that is interesting. I have been told he will be there on an unofficial for Bedlam. I have not verified that with him again, so I want to be clear about where that that information's kind of at. But I think he is incredibly interesting, and I know he's one of those guys. He's not even ranked on Rivals, so people are going to see that. And if OU were to offer him, and he, almost certainly would quickly commit, people are going to be like, "Oh, this is supposed to replace Colton Vasek," and I get why people would say no, but at the same time, I cannot say it enough times. Todd Bates, Brent Venables, that staff at Clemson, for all the people that love to talk about the Christian Wilkins and some of those guys. There is not enough credit paid to the guys they found that nobody was that excited about. And they had a really good track record with those guys. So, and again, part of him not being ranked, I think, is just because he hasn't really been evaluated, probably didn't go to any camps. That will change over time. And especially if he were to pick up an Oklahoma offer, he will find a ranking very quickly. But those are the kind of guys. Like Oklahoma is kind of like what Brent talked about. I think, what was that, 2 weeks ago? Yeah. Not 2 weeks ago, but a couple weeks ago, in that answer to Bob, where they're talking about finding, new names and people that have been overlooked as senior years because people have already moved on to 2024. When I watch this kid's senior tape, I mean, if you showed me an offer list that had, home state Tennessee and, some good SEC offers, I wouldn't be shocked at all. He's a good player. So I wonder how much OU is kind of doing their diligence, and they can be patient because, again, right now, his biggest offer is probably Troy. I mean, so it's not like OU's got to fight a big battle if they come in there as, the program that they are. And with Brent Venables leading the way, like, they can offer him with his current offer list, they probably offer him on December 15th and probably are still going to get him. So they can be patient. But, so there are several options. Another one is, and I'm going to blank on his last name. I believe it's Cameron Linhart is his actual, I think I'm saying that right. Yeah. Defensive end, IMG kid, committed to Nebraska. He was a Scott Frost commitment, decommitted when they let go of Scott Frost. And again, like I said, a 4-star kid at IMG. Obviously, OU's got a lot of other guys that they're in on there, including, former in-state guy David Stone. So there's a lot of ways that could help. I've gotten the impression there is some legitimate interest there, probably from both parties. So we'll kind of see where that goes. I kind of meant to mention him and Woke. This is something I kind of just left out by accident. So that'll be one to watch. But yeah, there's Oklahoma has a lot of ways they can go. And I think, unlike maybe at times, their predecessor, this staff, there's reason to believe that they're finding guys that they believe can help them rather than just, roster filler.
It is playoff time now. In high school football, Eddie and myself, no playoff games, and we'll be in Pittsburgh getting ready for West Virginia. But Josh, you got anything lined up for this weekend?
Yeah, Bob, that is literally what I was telling you guys. I was typing earlier. I have been looking over the schedule because there's not that obvious game. There's not, or at least it has. I haven't found it yet. That just screams at me like, oh, okay, I got to be here, I got to be there. But yeah, I mean, I will most likely be in the Houston area on Thursday. Might go see Katie Paytow. There's several different options. But there is like my initial plan had been to go see Austin Westlake and kind of catch up with Colton Vasek. Not necessary. So, kind of having to make some changes and move from there. But definitely we'll be out this weekend, go see several different schools and just kind of see, where things are at with a couple of guys. Because I think now I can start pivoting a little more to 2024. Like, I'd like to go see Bryant Wesco at Midlothian, the wide receiver that got offered during camp. I'd like to go see Decatur and see Nathaniel Palmer, the running back offer, who happens to be cousins with Jeffrey Ellison. Sorry, not Jeffrey Ellison, Josh Ellison. So there are several good possibilities of just kind of figuring out where it's going to be.
Well, we were talking about guys who might decommit. Colton was first. Anthony Evans is second. Any more concern now that Georgia did what it did against the Vols?
Evans is a concern, and Evans has gone pretty much radio silent to me this week, and that's not usually Anthony's method. So that is it may mean nothing, but it's not. I mean, my guess is that it doesn't. Like, he's sitting over, and it may be, I just want to take some time and think things over and go through it all. Like, for Georgia to put that performance on, the home atmosphere being like it was, everybody could see it on television, how great that looked. And then OU to kind of, lay an egg against Baylor and, Dylan Gabriel have 3 interceptions. Like, it's not exactly the comparison you wanted to have on that weekend. But at the same time, I know he's always stayed in good contact with LaDamian Washington. I know a lot of people felt like, oh, that must have impacted things. I always got the impression from Anthony that he might have not that he liked that things didn't go well for Cale Gundy, but that maybe he was a little closer to Washington. So I don't think that's inherently negative as some people have perceived it. But yeah, there's concern there. Now, what I realize all this is like OU fans are just like chewing their nails and jumping off cliffs right now. Talking to a few people, the rest of the class, I don't get any bad vibes from. I know there's a report out that Lewis Carter is going to visit Auburn. The guy, again, I just mentioned a little while ago. My impression, for those that don't know, Lewis Carter's head coach is Jarris McIntyre, played at Auburn with Cadillac Williams, who is, obviously the interim coach at Auburn right now. I get the impression Lewis is just coming along. Like, I don't, again, it's kind of the same thing Anthony Evans said, so I get why people would be skeptical. Oklahoma's situation's not perfect right now. It's a damn sight better than what Auburn's doing. So I don't think he's going to go to Auburn and be like, wow, this is incredible. Like, there's plenty of problems Auburn has to deal with long before they're going to go steal a guy from Oklahoma.
It's kind of amazing that they're sitting here at 5-4. If you would have told me they're going to go 5-4 in August and you're going to lose 1, maybe 2 commits out of the whole thing, I think a lot of people would have signed up for that. Obviously, it's not glamorous right now, but I mean, all things considered, pretty damn good job that they've been able to hold this thing together as well as they have.
And it's interesting because it's kind of a twofold thing for me. On one side, you've got, again, we've got 3 or 4 guys committed now have taken visits. You go all the way back to Ashton Cozart and some of that stuff, and it just feeds my, like, this is all for naught. Like, it doesn't provide anything. At the same time, you have to say, look at these guys that are going through this, and the fans are ready to quit. And, we've got people like, oh, I've got to cancel because I'm so upset about, you have people not dealing well with this. And yet you've got these 17 and 18-year-old guys who are like, I'm good. I'm solid. I trust what they're doing. I know this is a process. Like, saying and doing the right things. And you're just like, there's maybe I have to look at it and say, hey, there is something to all this. Like, maybe this makes more sense than I'm giving it credit for, because they wanted these guys to be sure. And the overwhelming majority are acting like confident guys in their decision.
So everything's not just terrible.
It's basketball time.
It
is terrible.
Real quick before we get to basketball, because that is terrible.
This feels like my basketball time. I should talk basketball.
I'm going to say
I
this,
feel
Josh.
Like this is my moment.
I will give you every opportunity to veto basketball talk today. If you want to do it, you can do it. They don't deserve to be talked about after losing. Sorry.
Real quick before we do get to the shit show that is 6A1 playoffs. Bixby obviously losing last week was a surprise. You think Bixby Union is still in play for a state championship game? I think, that's probably what I would pick here in the state of Oklahoma. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Jinx obviously playing really well.
That is, guys, I mean, I can't decide if that gives okay, they're mortal. Like, they can be beaten. Or if you just pissed Bixby off. Like, I don't know where I come out on that, but it's, I mean, and I think anybody that listens to this pod knows the guys at Jinx, in particular, our guy Adam Gaylor, guy that we've known forever and always worked with, like, happy for them. And the guys at Bixby, Lauren Montgomery's always been awesome to me every time I've dealt with him. So but I mean, I thought it was great for Oklahoma high school football to have that huge national stage and put just an amazing game out there for everybody to watch. I mean, that was ESPN's dream scenario. They got a couple of huge name national high school programs that just beat the crap out of each other for 4 quarters.
It was really funny listening to the commentators talk about this Jinx Bixby rivalry. Yeah. I know that it pissed off a lot of people in Tulsa. It's like the other one's a little bit bigger between Jinx and Union, but obviously Bixby's built into a powerhouse. It's been pretty unbelievable. I'd probably still pick them to win the state championship, although I do think that Union's extremely, extremely good.
To me, if Union's the only team that I feel like could handle Bixby on their best night.
Yes.
Like that's the way, because they have so many premier guys, like kind of like what we're talking about with OU. Like they might do something wrong, or Bixby gets them gets them out of position, but a guy like Demarion Thomas makes a play, or Devin Robinson, or any of their guys. Like they've got some guys that can make up for mistakes. And I don't know. And again, Jinx has beat them at home. Like I get it. Like total, absolute respect to the Trojans that and we know this is their time of year. But man, like Jinx just amazes me with what they're doing, because I mean they don't have the guys that I grew up watching Jinx have. Like it's just a bunch of really good high school football players.
Real quick, Demarion Thomas, is that somebody that OU? I mean, he's committed to Vanderbilt. I thought he was pretty impressive when we saw him against Mustang.
Yeah,
a couple weeks ago. Yep. I don't know. Like as much help as they need on the defensive line, is that just not an option?
I actually talked to Demarion yesterday, and he told me he's had no contact with Oklahoma. So and again, guys, we talked about it back during the camp, and we've referenced it a few times since. Mm-hmm. OU didn't seem interested when he was there. Like there wasn't when Nigel Smith was there, they were engaged and they were watching him, and they were Williams Maneri, same deal. Like very, we're teaching you, we're working with you. And I just, when Demarion Thomas got, it wasn't like OU didn't like him. It was just like, they're not serious about him. Like they're just not. And I know another good one locally. I know a lot of people are brought up by Job, and I've talked to a few people that just, I don't think that's – I think he's pretty locked in with Michigan State. And I know people would say, oh, it's crazy. He's a Norman kid. This isn't a kid that grew up knowing the difference between Michigan State and Oklahoma. Like, to him, they're just college football programs offering him an opportunity, and he has a really good relationship with Michigan State, and they always made him a priority. And OU, in spite of some trying to act as otherwise, kind of acted, he was kind of a secondary guy for them. He just was. And I don't know if OU is going to go down that road, but if they did, I don't really expect it to take them very far.
And in today's world of recruiting, it's like I almost feel like, good for him. Like to see a kid stick with his commitment like that.
Yep. And I mean, he's a good kid. Like I don't know how anybody wouldn't root for Bai. He's a super nice kid that has an incredible story and has overcome a lot to get to where he is.
What about the kid from Gore? The running back that has, kind of
Grove?
Grove.
Crawford.
Crawford.
Okay, I was like,
Daniel Crawford.
Holy crap, it's not every day.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Eddie doing some scouting on us at Gore.
No,
I was not ready for that one, Eddie.
They're on 169 way up there.
There Grove, again, I went up there 2 springs ago and saw Emmanuel Crawford, the running back you're talking about, and Carson Trimble, their quarterback. First of all, Grove has every chance to do something. I mean, that's a really talented backfield. I think Trimble's committed to UCO right now, if I'm not mistaken, at quarterback. And Crawford, he's a guy, when I talk to people, and to be honest, most of my conversations were kind of before his senior year. There was a feeling that maybe corner was where he belonged, because he's very slight in frame. He's not a big kid. He's not real, but very explosive. Got tons of speed. Can run with anybody. And it was kind of feeling like maybe you could turn him into a corner, and he could be like kind of a nickel slot type guy. And I think he's had such a good year at running back. It's like, well, almost like this feeling of like, well, if we offer him at corner, somebody's going to offer him at running back, and we're going to be wasting our time. But as time goes on, it's like, well, somebody's got to offer him one way or another. And so people, to me, like the idea that Tulsa's not just beating down his door is insane to me. Like, but it's more of, Tulsa's recruiting decisions in Oklahoma rarely make sense to me. But he is absolutely a really good player and a guy that is a FBS dude. And if he feels like the kind of guy that 15 years ago, Bill Snyder would have recruited to Kansas State. We would have forgotten about him for 2 years. And then all of a sudden he's, I'm not gonna say Darren Sproles, but like he's making all sorts of damaging plays in the run game for K-State.
Could Crawford be a slot guy, like a Chris Tyree, Raleek Brown type from the last couple classes?
I think he could be. Now, I won't say that I've seen a lot of his hands, but when I have seen him, like I said, I was up there for a full practice one morning a couple springs ago, and seeing him in some limited stuff he catches the ball fine. I've never seen anything that would tell me that couldn't work. I don't know if he's elite at it, but I mean, just get him the damn ball and let him go make plays because he's real freaking fast. So like, I don't know. He's one of those guys, and there's 3 or 4 in Oklahoma every year that just don't make sense to me. Like, I'm like, what does this kid have to do to get some notoriety? Eric Fields from Ardmore got another offer yesterday. Our guy, Julian Wilson at Abilene Christian, made him an offer. Joined, I think it was Arkansas State was his first offer. So he's starting to finally get a little notoriety, and I'm guessing Crawford here before too long will pick up some offers along those lines.
Gore is not where I thought it was.
Is
Gore's
it northwest?
Isn't that out towards like east? Isn't that?
Yeah.
No, I'm not even
It's
close.
Other way. Other way.
It's a little south. It's a little southeast of Muskogee. Fort Gibson's right above it.
I was going to put it close.
There's Chakota.
Over toward
like when you
Henrietta.
pass Chakota, if you're going to Arkansas, it's not. It's between Chakota and Vian. But it's off the highway.
Fun note there, the head man out there is the same guy who was Ron L. Lewis's head coach.
Oh, really?
Once upon a time. Uh-huh.
Bean?
Uh-huh. What's that?
Josh Bean?
Yeah. Wait, no. God, it's Brandon Tyler. Brandon Tyler was at Vian. For some reason, I crossed those two up in my head, and I know both of them, and for some reason, I put them in different places. I believe Bean is still at Dewar, so I don't know why I went there. So that fun fact is no longer a
no
thing.
longer
and
fun.
Just ignore that.
We accept your retraction.
No
Josh
longer
Bean is
fun nor a
absolutely
fact.
Yeah. It was all made up, but it shocked you for a minute, and you were excited about it. So you're welcome.
Now, before we talk about the dreaded subject, it is National Signing Day today. I've seen a lot of golf signings, some baseball here and there. Anything
Baseball
of real
going like
significance?
crazy, yeah.
I know that they're pretty happy with the baseball class. Obviously, when you go to Omaha, things are going to be a little bit more enhanced than maybe you thought it was going to be. But I think they feel like they have a really good class coming in, and the golf class is extremely good. I mean, obviously, with what Ryan Hibble's been able to bring in, I think the PJ Maybach kid is like the number 7 player in the class right now. So he's really, really good. And the Ryder Cowan kid from Oklahoma City, from Edmond, is extremely good as well. So they should be they just kind of add to whatever they already have. I mean, it's already.
Just keep bringing in the studs.
It's kind of like softball right now. They're just going to bring in the best of the best.
All right. And Bob, National Signing Day for basketball.
Your time has come.
Let's do this.
I still don't believe OU has announced anything yet officially. There may have been something announced and then gotten rid of, like deleted from social media, I think.
Yeah, Jacob Cole is in. There's no worries about that. So I was very curious that they took it down just a couple minutes later. But the question now becomes, will Caden Cooper and or Sebastian Mack decide during this period? Alabama has already had 4 letters of intent put in. They have their press release out. Caden Cooper's leaning toward OU or Bama, so now you get people speculating. Does that mean Bama knows he's not going there, and is he going to be a Sooner? And
maybe that's why OU hasn't announced anything. They know there's one more coming.
You start connecting dots like that, exactly. But the thing that I've heard about Cooper from a couple people Tuesday, he's made his choice, but he told absolutely no one.
Wow.
So I don't know.
I respect that.
I don't know, because you haven't seen the crystal balls, haven't seen the forecast, nothing. I don't know if he's just going to pop up 1 minute on Twitter and say, all right, I signed with OU, or I signed with Bama. So we're still sort of waiting, but all indications were he's an early period guy. He's going to make it during this little window that they have at this moment, and it's OU or Bama. I thought Bama led going into the week, But I know OU was never, ever going to throw in the towel and trying to bring an Ada kid back home. Even though he's in Atlanta at this moment at one of those basketball factory schools. He's originally from Ada, and they've really harped hard on bringing the hometown kid back home. Then you look at Mac. He's weird because I think OU thought they'd have him locked up the last couple months, and Florida State's still hanging around. UCLA's been making a late push. There's speculation he might not sign during this period. He might wait till the spring. I don't know if that'd throw off OU's plans for him, if they would still recruit him as hard as they've been. But there's been nothing in the last week at all about what Mac is trying to do besides his Final Five that he released a couple of weeks ago.
All right, let's get to it.
Now on to the game.
I mean, it's one of the more embarrassing losses in the history of Oklahoma basketball.
Yes.
There's just no other way to say it.
It is.
That quadrant won't change. It's a shitty quadrant win or loss.
It should count as like 7 quadrant losses.
A quadrant 7
like a
loss.
little bit in 1, a little bit in 2, a little bit in 3, a little bit in 4. It just shocking. I mean, 51 points is just, it's awful.
The narrative, like I wrote, it kept changing. Like you go there's okay, win in style, look good, play all 12 guys, see what you've got with Luke Northweather, Benny Schroeder, guys that I don't know how much run they're going to get as you get later into the season. And then it's 26-19 and a half. Like okay, you're not going to play those guys. Just win, start building off your second half performance when you win by 15 to 20 points. Okay, now that's not going to happen. Now it's just win. Just win. Let's get out of here. Let's go back to the film room Wednesday and be ready for Friday. And once Grant Sherfield started cramping, you're like, I don't even know if they're going to win because Lamar Wilkerson is playing out of his mind right now, hitting threes, and OU has no offensive answer. And just a rough lesson to learn in terms of your lineups, in terms of how athletic and downhill you want to play and not having the personnel out there that can do that for you. And just we won't be here Friday, so we won't have a clue what that crowd's going to look like. But a gut check moment from a Pine Bluff team that took TCU to the wire as well on Monday.
Joe Bamisile, 13 minutes?
Puzzling. Very puzzling because so high on him throughout the transfer process. And when Porter Moser mentions, I want to play the veterans, this is Bamisile's third team. It's not like he's going to be spooked by this type of moment. And it's not like he played some lower tier schools, Virginia Tech and George Washington. Like he understands what you would have to do in the final 3-4 minutes of a really tight game. And I know you don't trust him as much on defense at this moment, but what he brings with his athletic ability on offense is something no one else on that roster can do. Very puzzling, and I'm glad Porter took some ownership. It's like, I've got to mix this lineup. I've got to find the guys that do what I'm saying I want to do because they weren't going out transition. They didn't even look like they were attempting to want to start to lead a fast break. And if that's who your identity is trying to be, at least somewhat on offensive side of the ball, you've got to have the guys on the court that can actually do that.
How bad were Jalen Hill and CJ Nolan?
Weird. 0 for 12 between two of your starters, and Jalen Hill, just so many missed bunnies. And between Jalen Hill, Tanner Groves, those missed layups, that's stuff that's going to haunt you for a long time. And you just always hear about Jalen Hill getting better and his shots getting better.
Yeah, it's just supposed to be a breakout for him. I mean, the way he finished off last
and
year.
the exhibition was a disaster. Like, that's all right, exhibition. But now the first game was a disaster too. So he's got to bounce back just like this entire team. And they have to try to figure out what happened on defense. Because they played defense really, really well for the first 33, 35 minutes. And then from 46, 34 on, it just all fell apart.
Well, I'm sorry, but if you were hoping to break off and do your own basketball podcast this year, I don't think we're going to get any sponsorships.
I mean, they just got to be better. You just can't be that bad.
No, and luckily they have a lot of chances in the non-con to get this one back, but also a lot of chances where it could really bury them too. Like if you can't beat a Villanova or Arkansas or the Thanksgiving tournament that they've got coming up, if they can't make some impressive showing, they're not going to have a lot to sort of point toward with their resume and say, we know we did, we lost this, but we did this, and this after.
it's awesome. Do you think it's going to be? Obviously, they had a bad night offensively. Oh, that's obvious. Is it going to be that hard to score all year? You think?
The exhibition.
I don't want to hear the shit about Sam Houston State just played good defense. They're Sam Houston State. Come on.
Exhibition was kind of that way too, so that's what's alarming. It absolutely is, and that is who are your shooters? Who are going to be those guys that can light it up on any given night? Even Mo Gibson wasn't consistent in doing it, but those 3 or 4 times when he would hit 6 or 7 threes, you just kind of breathe it's going to be okay. Is Grant Sherfield can be that guy when he's going to have the ball in his hands as much as he does, as Joe Bamisile can. Is he an outside shooter, or is he more of a slasher and someone that you look in that regard? So shooting and help in the post, it's going to be very curious to sort of see how it all shakes out. And if Tanner Groves needs a breather, which he's going to, is Sam Godwin actually going to be your answer? Though?
Yeah, which is kind of scary when you think about getting into Big 12 play and all these teams that are going to be in the Big 12. I think 3 in the top 8 right now. They got their work cut out for them. There's no doubt about that. Doing it the last week and a half, 2 weeks couldn't have gone worse for Porter Moser, just as far as the weirdness with the Matt Brady stuff, which we still don't know a whole lot of information about.
And Porter would not give us any. I know we talked to him after we did the last pod. Porter was very, stern, I guess, or terse. He's
pissed off about the situation. There's no doubt about that. And when you add that into the way that they played on Monday, it's just there's only one or two things that you just can't do as a college basketball program at a school, especially like Oklahoma, and that's have people talking about basketball in early November like they are right now.
In a negative light.
In a negative light. You can't go out and embarrass the university, and you can't just be awful. I don't know. Rough.
And I know ESPN Plus broadcast was rough too, and a lot of jokes. Oh, I'm glad you didn't have to see it.
Yeah, it was just weird. I think having 2 basketball games in one day was more than ESPN Plus could handle. I watched it. It was just weird. Anyway, I do have one little interesting note before we leave. Kings of Leon's just finishing their tour over in Australia.
Brady Manick?
Yes. Did he tweet about that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, Jared ran into Brady Manick. I woke up to that this morning. I was like, that's random. I didn't even know he was in Perth, playing for Perth or whatever.
I think he's playing on the same team over there as Tashawn Thomas, right?
Yes.
Oh,
yep.
he is. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. All right. Well, anything else that we need to get out of there before we get on our way?
I don't think so.
Wait, what was the relevance of that story? Were those basketball players? Are those guys that play basketball?
Sir, you disrespect the name Brady Manick.
Brady Manick around here,
have
man.
problems.
Wow, he's really proud of himself.
Look at the cackling.
I know.
He's a villain.
Unbelievable. OU needs to go play well in Morgantown. I
think that atmosphere is going to be dead.
Yeah,
So if you come out early.
And if they
Take care
play
of it.
well early, we know this, they will leave. Like the people that show up, if their team is down, they will leave at halftime.
They're waiting to fire Neil Brown as fast as possible, and for whatever reason, JT Daniels has not worked out.
It's like $20 million to get rid of Neil Brown, though, his buyout. It's crazy. All right, well, that's going to do it. Eddie, Bob, you'll hear from them next from West Virginia. Is they're flying out Friday morning, and it's going to be cold.
It's bitter cold.
It's going to be like 24 degrees, so prepare yourselves for it. And we will have the post-game show, the Eskridge Lexus post-game show. Soonerscoopstore.com is open. We've got a full selection of gear, hats. We still got some Isaiah Thomas hoodies, really cheap, $10, $5 for T-shirts. Still got some of those left, so stock up for winter as it's coming along. Get yourself a new hat if you want as well. Soonerscoopstore.com. So thanks to everybody for listening. We'll be back again next week for another edition of the Unofficial 40 Podcast right here from Soonerscoop.com.